What if becoming a better man isn't about being perfect, but about being quietly consistent? In a world that tells you to hustle louder, show more, and chase approval, it's easy to forget what true strength looks like. Most men today feel stuck, emotionally drained, constantly reacting, silently wondering, am I doing life right? But Stoic philosophy offers a different path, one that isn't loud, but unshakable. The Stoics believe that greatness isn't something you shout about, it's something you build in silence. One disciplined thought, one calm response, one clear decision at a time. This is your ultimate guide to becoming a better person. Not through hype, but through emotional discipline, self-respect, and quiet transformation. If you've ever felt tired of overthinking, burned out from trying to prove yourself, or overwhelmed by noise, this guide is for you. You're not alone. Many men are looking for emotional clarity, inner peace, and a way to live that feels real again. And the Stoic way? It works because it's built for people who live in the real world with real pain and real responsibilities. Stick around. You'll learn 8 timeless principles that can help you rebuild from within, with Stoic self-improvement, emotional control, and mental clarity. If this speaks to you, like the video, subscribe, and share it with a friend who needs this message. This might be the calm reset your life's been waiting for. 1. Earn greatness quietly, one step at a time. You don't become a better man by chasing applause. You become one in silence, when no one's watching, when it doesn't feel rewarding, when it's just you versus your old habits. Most men wait for motivation to strike. They wait for the perfect moment, the perfect version of themselves to appear. But real growth doesn't work that way. Growth isn't loud. It doesn't announce itself. It shows up in how you respond when life gets inconvenient. That's where greatness begins, not in the spotlight, but in the quiet resistance to everything pulling you off track. The world today glorifies instant results, flash success, fast power. But anything that comes fast usually fades faster. Stoicism doesn't promise easy change. It teaches that becoming a better man is about showing up the right way, consistently. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire, but what made him remarkable wasn't his title. It was how he fought his impulses, how he led with clarity when he could have ruled with ego. He wasn't perfect, he wasn't emotionless, but he was disciplined, and that made him strong. A better life doesn't start with ambition, it starts with attention. Imagine this: you're in traffic, late, tired, someone cuts you off, the old you snaps, but today you pause, you breathe, you let it go. It seems small, but this is how emotional self-control is trained, through 1,000 invisible victories. You choose calm over chaos, not because it's easy, but because it's who you're trying to become. The problem isn't that men don't want to improve, it's that they think change has to be dramatic. They underestimate the power of repetition. But greatness doesn't come from one big leap. It's built through steady, invisible steps. Small acts of self-discipline compound into strength. One decision to walk away instead of arguing. One night choosing sleep over scrolling. One morning where you show up for your promise instead of your mood. These are not minor. They're the bricks of a stronger identity. Most people live in reaction. They wake up and follow the current. Email demands, mood swings, and distractions. Stoicism says, stop. Ask yourself what truly matters. Is this action aligned with who I want to be? Is it essential? If not, let it go. That's how clarity is built, by trimming the noise and protecting your focus like it's sacred. Because it is. The quality of your attention is the quality of your life. There's power in quiet consistency, in doing the thing no one praises, in choosing effort over excuse. You don't need to prove anything to the world. You need to prove something to yourself, that you're capable of being better, even if no one claps for it. Especially then, start simple. Choose one thing today that makes you better. Not louder, not busier, just better. It could be taking a cold shower, turning your phone off an hour earlier, or speaking less and listening more. You don't need a complete transformation. You need one solid step, and then another. Let that be enough for today. That's how better men are built. Not by force, not by hype, but by quiet, deliberate strength, repeated until it becomes who you are. 2. Use reflection to sharpen the soul. Most men today are running, from task to task, from noise to more noise, and somewhere in that constant motion, they lose sight of who they are. They work harder, chase more, but feel less connected to themselves. Being busy becomes a badge of honor, but without stillness, it becomes a disguise. What Stoicism teaches is that motion means nothing without direction, and direction starts with self-reflection. Daily reflection is not a luxury. It's not a retreat, it's a form of responsibility. To stop and ask, did I act with courage today? Did I live with discipline? Did I react out of fear or choose calm? Most men don't ask these questions, not because they don't care, but because they don't stop. They don't create space to face the answers. But without facing yourself, you cannot change yourself. You just repeat old patterns with new goals and wonder why nothing feels different. There's a moment every night, just before sleep, when the world quiets down. That's your mirror. Not your bank account, not your to-do list, not your title. That moment tells the truth. Did you live today as the man you want to become? Or did you drift, pulled by distractions, shaped by reactions? In that space, reflection becomes a weapon. It sharpens your awareness. It holds you accountable, not to others, but to your higher self. The mistake most men make is assuming that growth only happens through action. But unexamined action leads to exhaustion. You do more but become less. You hustle, but the man inside is left unattended. Stoicism flips the model. It says, slow down, look within, adjust. True strength is not about appearing composed. It's about being composed, because you've trained yourself to see clearly, to act intentionally, to live deliberately. Picture a man who always feels scattered, reactive, taut, and unsure. He wakes up, checks his phone, and gets pulled into a dozen different directions before breakfast. He means well, but his energy leaks everywhere. He never sits with himself long enough to ask if what he's doing even matters. Now picture another man. He starts his day by writing one line, "What would it look like to lead myself today?" And before sleep, he asks, "Where did I drift? Where did I stay true?" That man, even if he's less busy, is becoming something powerful. Reflection doesn't need to be poetic. It just needs to be honest. Write one sentence. Ask one tough question. Create 5 minutes of silence and use it as a compass. That's all. But do it every day. Because what you don't reflect on, you repeat. And repetition without awareness creates stagnation. A man who doesn't look within ends up imitating the world outside, reacting, performing, and slowly forgetting who he was meant to be. If you want to become a better person, sharpen the soul first. Not with judgment, but with curiosity. Look without excuses. Adjust without shame. It's not about being flawless, it's about being fully present with who you are becoming. Make time for reflection not when life allows it, but because life demands it. And if you're unsure where to start, tonight is enough. One quiet moment, one honest question. That's how you reclaim your direction. That's how real growth begins. 3. Live your values, especially when it's hard. It's easy to speak about integrity. It's easy to claim honesty, courage, or discipline, until keeping those values costs you something. That's the point where most men fold. Not because they're weak, but because the world rarely rewards moral consistency. You'll get more attention by being flexible. You'll fit in quicker if you betray your own boundaries. That's the modern temptation. Bend who you are to gain what you want. But every time you do that, something in you gets smaller. And eventually, you no longer recognize the man in the mirror. Living by your values when it's uncomfortable, that's the real measure of character. Stoicism never said virtue was convenient. It only said virtue is necessary. Marcus Aurelius didn't have an easy life. He wasn't sitting in comfort sipping wine while writing about wisdom. He was dealing with betrayal, war, sickness, and death. And still, he wrote, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." That wasn't theory. That was armor. Because in chaos, values are not a luxury. They are your foundation. The mistake men often make is separating who they are from what they do. They believe values are something they believe in, not something they bleed for. But Stoicism demands alignment. Your beliefs must show up in your decisions, your tone, your choices, even when no one is there to validate them. Especially then, because becoming a better person isn't about talking the right way. It's about choosing the harder road when the easy one looks better. Imagine this. You're in a meeting. A colleague blames you to save face. You feel the heat rise. You could retaliate, embarrass him in return. You could lie to defend your ego. Or you could pause. Breathe. Respond with clarity, not pride. You don't need to prove anything. Your strength is rooted in principle. And in that moment, you lose nothing and gain everything. Not approval, but control. Not applause, but peace. That's what living your values actually gives you. Calmness in the middle of fire. Most men are performing a version of themselves. They want to be seen as good, strong, and reliable. But under pressure, that version cracks because it's built for optics, not truth. Stoic men don't perform, they practice. Every situation is a chance to reinforce what they stand for. Not by being perfect, but by being committed. Even when it's costly, even when it's invisible. Because the one man who's always watching is you. And the man who keeps his word to himself, that's a rare kind of power. You don't need to declare your values to the world. Just let your choices speak for you. Speak the truth when it's easier to lie. Do the hard thing when no one gives you credit. Walk away when it would feel better to fight. Hold back when ego wants to lash out. That's not weakness, that's control. And control builds character. Start there. One decision, one moment where you choose who you are over who the world expects you to be. That's how integrity becomes more than a word. It becomes who you are, under pressure, without compromise. 4. Stay mysterious, stay in control. Not everything needs to be explained. Not every emotion deserves an audience. In a time where people feel pressured to share everything, thoughts, struggles, routines, private victories, something powerful happens when a man chooses silence. Silence is not avoidance, but a statement. Control doesn't always come from having the right words. Often it comes from knowing when to say nothing at all. The modern world rewards overexposure. We've been taught to perform, to explain ourselves, to stay visible or risk being forgotten. But the more you expose, the more you give away. And with every unfiltered outburst, every impulsive share, your presence becomes predictable. You lose the strength that lives in mystery. Stoicism values restraint, not because emotion is wrong, but because discipline over expression builds dignity. When you speak less, you mean more. The mistake many men make is believing that vulnerability must always be public. But there is a difference between honesty and oversharing. A Stoic knows how to feel deeply, yet carry it quietly. He isn't cold, he's composed. He knows that composure isn't a mask, it's a method. It allows space to think clearly, to choose words deliberately, and to protect what matters most, his peace. Control doesn't start when things are calm. It's built in storms, when everything in you wants to react and you choose not to. Imagine this. You're in a conversation with someone who mocks your values. They laugh, trying to provoke a response. You feel the burn rise inside. You could argue, you could defend yourself endlessly, but you stay still. You look them in the eye without explaining. Your silence unsettles them, not because you're weak, but because you're rooted. In that pause, you say more than a monologue ever could. You show that not everything deserves your energy, and more importantly, not everyone deserves access to your inner world. The world thinks power comes from being loud. Stoicism disagrees. Seneca once said, "To be everywhere is to be nowhere." The same applies to your presence. When you're constantly reacting, constantly revealing, you spread yourself too thin. You lose your edge. But when you choose where to show up and where to hold back, you become more powerful because now you're acting, not reacting. You're directing the narrative, not being directed by it. Mystery isn't manipulation, it's protection. It's knowing that your energy, your story, your truth don't need to be understood by everyone. The need to explain comes from insecurity. The confidence to stay silent comes from self-worth. You don't owe the world your every thought. You owe yourself peace, clarity, and the ability to observe without being pulled into every battle. Start practicing this today. The next time you're tempted to defend, pause, breathe. Let your silence be your response. The next time you want to explain your every move, don't. Let your actions speak. Let your calm unsettle the chaos around you. You're not here to be decoded. You're here to be deliberate. You're here to remain in control. And the man who controls his words, especially in moments of pressure, never loses his power. He sharpens it, quietly, unshakably. 5. Choose yourself. Even in a world that does a ton, you can live your whole life waiting for someone to see you, to finally get the recognition, the approval, the signal that says, you matter now. But what if that signal never comes? What if the world stays distracted, indifferent, or blind to what you carry inside? The truth is, many men spend years trying to earn validation from people who never really saw them in the first place. And in the process, they lose the one voice that truly matters, their own. To choose yourself means to stop outsourcing your worth. It's not arrogance, it's alignment. You stop performing, stop chasing applause, and start building from within. Stoicism doesn't teach men to be self-absorbed. It teaches them to be self-governed. Because a man who doesn't belong to himself will belong to anyone who pays him attention. And that's a dangerous way to live. The common mistake is thinking that choosing yourself looks selfish or cold. But emotional independence isn't about shutting people out. It's about not collapsing every time someone doesn't clap. You become a better man not by being liked, but by being steady. You don't need to prove anything to those who never understood your journey. You just need to prove that you can stay grounded in who you are, even when the room doesn't reflect it back to you. Imagine a man who walks into a gathering, unsure of himself, trying to match the tone, mirror the crowd, nod at things he disagrees with, and laugh at what doesn't feel right. He leaves drained, disconnected, unsure why. Now, picture another man. He walks in quietly. He doesn't explain his presence. He listens more than he speaks. He doesn't bend to fit. He brings the room into his calm. He doesn't dominate, but he doesn't shrink either. That's what it looks like to choose yourself. Ada Lovelace didn't wait for permission to be brilliant. She created value in silence. Not because the world was ready to understand her, but because she had something real to give. And she respected herself enough to build it anyway. That's what Stoic strength looks like in action. No applause, just alignment. You don't need the crowd to believe in your work if you believe in your foundation. Choosing yourself isn't loud. It happens in the moments when you turn down what isn't aligned. When you say no to roles, people, and versions of life that dilute your sense of direction. When you stop explaining your worth to people who've already made up their minds. When you find stillness in your own approval, even if no one else offers it. Start small. The next time you're tempted to shapeshift for approval, don't. The next time silence makes you feel invisible, embrace it. Use that space to strengthen your inner voice. Speak with it. Write from it. Decide on it. You're not here to convince others you belong. You're here to walk as if you already do. And the man who walks like that, calm, rooted, clear, he doesn't need to raise his voice to be heard. His presence speaks for him. His self-respect leads the way. 6. Pause before you react. Power lies in the gap. Something happens. You feel it before you think it. Tight chest, clenched jaw, rising heat. Someone disrespects you. Life throws a punch. You're ready to snap. That instant is where most men lose themselves. Not in the event, but in the reaction. And in a world that rewards speed and dominance, slowing down feels like weakness. But it's not. It's mastery. To pause is to reclaim your power. Not to suppress emotion, but to choose your response. That's the difference between reaction and control. Most people are ruled by triggers. They wear their emotions like exposed wires, waiting to be set off. But the Stoic man creates space. He doesn't avoid the feeling. He observes it. He lets it rise, then lets it go. That space, between what happens and what you do, is where emotional self-control is born. The modern mistake is thinking that quick reaction means strength, that yelling back, hitting harder, or dominating a room is power. But that's noise, not clarity. Power remains grounded while others lose their center. It's the man who pauses, breathes, and responds with intention, who owns the room without raising his voice. Stoicism trains you to live in that gap. Epictetus said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." The reaction is always your responsibility, always within your control. Imagine standing in a hallway after a meeting. Someone calls you out, questions your integrity in front of others. You feel the sting. The old version of you is ready to lash back, to defend, to protect the ego at all costs. But this time, you stop, you look at him, you say less. You let your composure speak. In that moment, you don't lose yourself. You don't trade peace for dominance. You win because you stayed in command of the only thing that ever mattered, yourself. Most men are at the mercy of external storms. They live in reaction mode. Traffic, arguments, stress, they let it shape their identity. Over time, they become scattered, always catching up, always exhausted. But a man who pauses rewires his nervous system. He rewrites his story. He proves to himself again and again that he can stay calm when the world turns chaotic. And calm isn't passive, it's decisive. It chooses stillness over escalation, thought over impulse. Start building that space today. Don't wait for peace to find you. Practice in small moments. When the line is long, breathe. When someone interrupts, hold your response for a few seconds. When your body reacts, ask your mind to wait. This isn't about ignoring what's real. It's about owning how you deal with it. Emotional discipline is a skill, not a personality trait. And it starts by honoring that sacred gap between stimulus and action. If you want to be unshakable, don't seek control over others. Seek control over yourself. Because the man who pauses before he speaks, before he reacts, before he decides, builds something far more powerful than a reaction. He builds character, quietly, consistently, in every breath he doesn't waste. 7. Adapt with grace. Care for the vessel. You can't lead your life well if you're falling apart inside your own body. Strength isn't just in the mind, it needs a vessel that can carry it. Most men don't realize they're burning out until it's too late. They push harder, sleep less, eat mindlessly, ignore pain, and wear stress like armor. But underneath the grind, the foundation cracks. What Stoicism teaches is simple: to control your emotions, to think clearly, to live with discipline. You must first take care of the thing that houses it all. Adaptability begins with awareness. Life will not slow down to match your pace. You either adjust with grace or break under resistance. The Stoic doesn't try to force the world into submission. He studies it. He observes what he can control and what he can't. Then he shifts, he simplifies. He conserves his energy for what truly matters, and he honors his body as the vehicle of his choices. That isn't weakness, it's wisdom. Men often think physical care is vanity, that paying attention to rest, nutrition, or mental balance is soft. But your energy is your edge. When your mind is foggy and your body is running on fumes, you lose control of the very thing Stoicism calls you to master, your reason. You become reactive. You say things you regret. You give in to impulses that steal your time, your dignity, and your focus. Self-neglect is not a badge of masculinity. It's a blueprint for collapse. Picture a man who drags himself through the day. His back aches. His sleep is shallow. His meals are rushed or skipped. He scrolls at midnight because he's too restless to be still. He thinks willpower will save him, but his nervous system is overloaded and his thoughts spiral out of control. Now, picture a man who prioritizes restoration. He trains, not for image, but for discipline. He sleeps not out of laziness, but for clarity. He says no to constant stimulation so he can hear himself think. That man is more dangerous, not because he moves faster, but because he moves with purpose. Seneca believed that simplicity was strength, to eat with intention, to sleep with peace, to clear the clutter, not just around you, but within you. A Stoic doesn't chase ease, but he respects balance, because when you are physically steady, your mind follows. You start noticing what drains you. You build routines that protect your energy. You don't need to retreat to a mountain. Just 5 minutes of stillness, one focused breath, one real meal eaten slowly. These small things carry the weight of giants when done consistently. Start by auditing your body, not for performance, but for presence. How do you feel when you wake up? When do you crash? What are you feeding your system, physically and mentally? The goal isn't perfection, it's alignment. You want your body and mind moving in the same direction, quiet, strong, and steady. Because the man who takes care of the vessel isn't weak, he's preparing for the storm. And when it hits, he's ready. Not because he's the strongest, but because he's the most centered. 8. Forgive wisely, but guard your boundaries. You can let go of the pain without reopening the door. That's the part most men struggle with. They confuse forgiveness with permission. They think being a better person means tolerating disrespect, absorbing betrayal, and proving they've moved on by staying available. But that's not emotional maturity. That's emotional exhaustion. Stoicism teaches that you can release the weight without surrendering your dignity. You can choose peace and still enforce your standards. And sometimes, the most powerful act of forgiveness is walking away without needing an apology. Forgiveness isn't about the other person. It's about cutting the emotional cord that keeps your peace tied to their regret. But guarding your boundaries, that's about protecting your energy, about drawing a line between who you are becoming and what no longer belongs in your life. A Stoic understands that not every relationship is worth preserving. Not every offense must be explained, and not every act of kindness should become a pattern of self-abandonment. The common trap is thinking that setting limits makes you cold, that demanding respect means you're not over it. But that's not truth. That's guilt talking. Boundaries don't block connection. They define it. They tell people where the real you begins and where manipulation ends. And when someone crosses that line, there must be a consequence. Not for revenge, but for clarity. A line that's never enforced is just a suggestion. And Stoicism does not deal in suggestion. It deals in action, in principle, in what is essential to living in peace. Imagine someone who wronged you returns, not with remorse, but with comfort. They want access again, not to rebuild, but to resume. You feel the pull. The part of you that wants closure to be seen, to prove you're not bitter. But instead of folding, you pause. You remember who you've become in their absence. You thank them, maybe even forgive them. But you don't let them back in, because you've grown. And protecting that growth matters more than pleasing someone who once broke it. Seneca wrote, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." Time isn't just about hours, it's about attention. Every time you re-engage what you've already outgrown, you dilute your focus. You trade your peace for a past that has no intention of changing. The Stoic man understands this. He knows that emotional self-respect means refusing to let history become a habit. And healing doesn't require a round two. It requires boundaries strong enough to hold what's been learned. So, how do you practice this? Begin by separating your healing from their behavior. Choose to release resentment because it's heavy, not because they earned it. Then define your limit, clearly, calmly, without guilt. Decide what behaviors you no longer have access to. And if those lines are tested, hold firm. Not angrily, not dramatically, just unshakably. Being a better person doesn't mean saying yes to everything. It means having the strength to say no to chaos, to repetition, to any version of love that costs your peace. That's not bitterness, that's maturity. That's what the Stoics called justice. Not for them, but for yourself. Becoming a better man is not about changing who you are overnight. It's about choosing each day to live with a little more clarity, a little more self-respect, and a little more emotional discipline. What you've heard today isn't theory. It's a path, one that demands consistency, not perfection. Through the wisdom of Stoic philosophy, you've learned that greatness isn't loud, it's quiet, deliberate, and built through repetition. That reflection is not a ritual, but a necessity. Those values only matter when they cost you something. That mystery holds power. That choosing yourself is not selfish, it's survival. The pause before reaction is where your real strength lives. That your body, your vessel, must be respected to carry your purpose. And that forgiveness without boundaries is not healing, it's surrender. Every one of these insights connects to a single principle. Self-mastery begins within. You do not control the world. You do not control other people, but you control how you respond, how you live, and who you choose to become, especially when no one is watching. Let these practices be more than ideas. Let them shape your mornings, guide your decisions, and steady you in chaos. You don't need to be perfect to begin. You only need to begin with intention. So take one idea from this guide, apply it today, then repeat tomorrow. Build something unshakable, not to impress others, but to live with quiet power. And if any part of this spoke to you, share it in the comments. Your story might help another man find his footing. Stay grounded, stay clear, stay the course. The world needs fewer loud men and more men of depth. Be one of them.